Hi, it's Hazel. Welcome to my channel. Today will be a relatively short video, I think. I'm going to be concentrating on getting some of the stuff off my desk that is taking up way too much real estate, and at the same time working towards this hashtag arm's length art, which is a challenge created, I don't know, by Kim Newberg. So I'll be using what's on my desk as well as some things that maybe I purchased even a long time ago and have never used. So we'll start, and I prepped a bunch of things because, of course, you know how I feel about making you watch people cut and paste and ink and all of that. So I bought a bunch of these little glassine bags a long time ago, and I don't think I've used a single one. So it's high time I did that. So basically what I've done is I've chosen 4 little bags. I'm using some of the Tim Holtz people, as well as a piece of an old prescription, some letters from some scrapbook paper that looked like Scrabble tiles, and just some cardstock. So let me get my kind of grungy glue thingamajigger. So I think what might be simpler, because these things are so tiny, like these bags are 2 inches by 4 inches, so everything is pretty darn tiny. So I think what I might do, just for speed and ease of making things happen in a timely way, I'll use my art glitter glue. Oh, brother. Kind of a gross little top on this thing. Anyway, I will use art glitter glue. I've kind of figured out on each of these how I want it to go. So maybe let's set the bag aside for a moment because it's a bit slippery. Although, no, let's keep it handy because I don't want to have my little collage go beyond the borders off it. Okay, so if that's my base paper, I'm then going to add a bit of this. I'll do it fairly high so that it is visible above this gal's head. Okay. So, about half an inch or so. We'll get her glued up. I hope that you are well. I'm taping this on a Thursday. I'm not sure when it'll be posted, but every day is a good day for using up desk scraps. Something is crooked here. Boy, I guess I better learn to love a skew when I'm using art glitter glue. Yeah, I don't... Ay. Maybe I'll put this towards the bottom. Sometimes when I make something and it looks a little bit off, you know, obviously if I had done something like that, then that's a deliberate design decision. But if it's just a hair off, then it feels like, oh, brother. So sometimes I try to place something so it takes away. See, by doing that, yeah. By doing that, it already looks better to my eye. And of course, doing this while taping is not the ideal scenario either, because I would have this stuff a lot closer to me if I wasn't, taping. Okay. And hopefully I get good. This paper is so fragile. Yesterday I was working with some other stuff. Actually, it was a combination of things that I got in the paper outpost fundle. And one week I also won the Scrap Chat contest as well. So I had some really old and really brittle things to work with. And it just felt like, what am I keeping this for? Get a grip, woman, get a grip. Okay, so this one, I have the prescription. And you'll notice that where I don't have to waste time, not fraying, but, making the edge raggedy jaggedy, I don't. Again, I'd like this to be fairly high so that the handwriting and the old prescription pad thing show. I've never, well, I shouldn't say that. Up until recently, I never had any of these Tim Holtz people. Well, that wasn't very clever, was it? I've inked them all up. Now their legs and everything are... So I'd better get this down quick like. Up until recently, I had never invested in Tim Holtz people, so I didn't realize that they were, fairly sturdy, that they had been, die cut on a cardstock weight paper. I think I intended this someplace else, but since I missed the boat on that, whoops. Oh, I guess I could. Yeah, I'm going to have it go off the page. And then once that glue dries, I'll trim it just to, I do like that look of things, either just kissing the edge of something or bleeding off the edge. So let's do that right now. One thing I didn't, okay, so that's good. It's not, you don't quite get the same grab. How am I doing here? Maybe I'll set these two aside and do them if I still have time. I want to get to some of the other projects. So another thing that I did, I had a bunch of these 4-inch doilies. I think they're 4 inches. Just over 4 inches. And I had made a batch of what I thought was fairly dark tea. I think I used 6 or 8 El Cheapo black tea tea bags in a, oh, it was a 4-cup measuring cup. So I mean, to the eye it looks fairly dark, but yet when I just spritzed those doilies, it didn't work that well, simply because it wasn't dark enough for my liking. So I waited till they dried, and then I gave them a second shot, and they still weren't very cool looking. So then I spread them all out, and I have a quartz countertop on my kitchen island, well, in the kitchen. And so I spread them all out there to dry. Then I threw the whole bunch in a baking pan with the same tea mixture. But of course, that paper is so fragile that even though it was just basically dunk in and remove, this is sort of what happened to some of them. So I've set aside the more ratched up ones so that I would be sure to use them soon rather than storing something like this. So the ones that I got off there intact, I then flattened under some weight so that they'd be ready to use. Anyway, what I've got here is some napkin that I collaged at some point onto, I'm thinking it was probably book page, and then I covered it with a sort of a cardstock and sewed around the edge. For those of you who may not have visited my Etsy store, I do have bundles of napkins, assortments in colorways that are great for something like this. And I know that some people sell napkins, you know, in bundles of 4 or whatever, 4 of the same kind. My preference and what I've chosen to do is to give you 1 of each kind, thinking that, you know, who's going to use 4 of the same kind. This is out of my digital cameo kit, and I'd fussy cut these long ago. I'll just show you that. Well, I guess this represents part of 2 kits. One is called Greek Bronzes, and it's got, well, of course the roses are from another kit, and a lot of these cameos and jewel type things. So which one did I have? Okay, this guy I had. It was just important that I start using some of these things that, well, number 1, I've got, and number 2, I've invested the time in cutting, and because they're cool. So I don't really want to cover up the dragonfly, so I'm kind of putting everything in this lower corner. I think, well, in a recent video, I showed this gizmo. It's a Fisker's tool. And you slip it over your index finger. And I used it to cut out these little guys. It's not something that a person would readily try, you know, just with a, you know, with a pair of scissors or... And that tool just somehow seems easier than an X-Acto knife. So, I don't know. I've got it. I like it. I'm using it. So again, it's just a case of picking a few things that go together. This was something that I stamped on old Sears catalog order forms. Oh, wrong. I want this 2 to go down underneath there first, so kind of important to do this in the right order. I'll lay that down there. And that's just a book page out of a book with some really cool, a beautiful, rich paper. You know, the kind that you feel like feeling all day long. So we'll call that one done. Where did I put those other guys? Oh, right here. Then, in a similar vein, I found, I don't know whose this is. I don't know why I only have sort of half. This might have been a freebie of somebody's. I think I have to start paying more attention to whose stuff is what, although it is a lot to remember. So basically, 8.5 tall, almost 6 wide, which would be too wide for the average journal. So I folded back the edge, thinking that I would use it as a flip. Now my intention here was to use one of these ratty doilies and maybe have an undamaged part go around the edge. So I should actually bend that, not bend, fold. We know that gluing down doilies is not much fun. I obviously don't want to cover up the flowers because that's gorgeous. So the other elements I picked were another one out of that kit, which I think is gorgeous. I can cover up the words there. I wanted to introduce some blue down at the bottom. And this is a little die cut out of this particular one. So I liked it because the blue and the green tie into the floral there. So that's sort of what I had in mind. Oh, and I was going to use, I hope I didn't glue the wrong cameo. Oh, I was going to use this one. Oh, you know what? I did, oh dear. Anyway, it doesn't matter, I guess. I'll put this cameo here. I think somehow those got switched. But anyway, that's beside the point. Okay, so I want to roughly start down there at the bottom of the stem. So usually I try to pick, get my bearings. And because, you know, in the time it takes to pick it up and glue it, a person's mind can totally be gone. And I think I'm not going to be too concerned about getting those other things down just yet, because that's going to take a little bit of finagling. So line it up with that, get this thing down. And now now that I've got a little bit of certainty as to where it's going to be, I can strategically add some glue, especially along the edges, because there will be, you know, obviously other things glued down on top of this, which will help hold it so I don't have to have, you know, a speck of glue on every single element of the doily. I wonder if I should have turned on some lights. I'm taping today with just the natural light that comes into my office studio because it's sunny today. Now, if I would have been an early bird and gotten in here, my bigger window is east facing, So at some points in the year, and of course I'm in the northern hemisphere, at some points in the year, I can't sit at this desk without being blinded by the sun. But that doesn't last for, whoops. That doesn't last for that long. See, wouldn't it be nice not to have that air bubble there? Let's cover it up with a vase. Okay, I want that over, so let's do this blue little strippy thing. I think this came out of an 8x8, stack of paper. Could have used that side, I suppose. And I just basically want to cover up that word. I usually, when I'm collaging, like to make sure that there is some sort of relationship between the objects. So I wouldn't put this up there and this over here and this over here. I want them to be touching, connected, linked in some way. And that would be, and there are ways to achieve that, either through color, overlapping. You want, the goal here is to have the eye enter the art piece at some point and flow right through it in a logical way. So let's pretend that this is anchored and sitting on this blue thing. It's fairly close to the top. I will put this underneath. And if I feel that there's a gap there, I can add in a sentiment or a word from a magazine or a kit of some sort. Now, what that blue paper was so solidly blue that I did ink it up with Blueprint Sketch. And even though I had done a spectacular job of fussy cutting, I did do a light inking before I turned on the camera, just so that, any little, I guess this could have been a little better here, just so any bits of this are white aren't going to jump out at you. Okay, and then if I put these guys here, almost feels like I have to move this over a smidge. Don't want that to get too close to the fold. Now, if I weren't taping, I'd be using art glitter glue. I'd be using glue stick here, and just a dab of art glitter glue on these, on the handles of this urn. You can see how very little of this glue is needed to get really good hold. And if you've watched more than one video of anybody's, you probably know that it's instant grab. So you better know what you're doing regarding placement before you set that baby down. And in a case like this, I would use the heel of my hand. No, this is the heel. I'd use my fist to flatten that down, just so that I don't, disrupt anything if I was using a room card or something like that, a room key card. Normally, I don't like people looking outside of the let's say frame in this case. But since I inadvertently switched, maybe I'll put this lower down, have it touching the base, have that there. Hold it up and think, ah, yes. I wish I would have thought of picking a sentiment before I turned on the camera. So even though you're seeing these things get a good start, they still may not be totally done. Oh, for heaven's sake. I will put that with the done ones. The other thing I wanted to do was some book binding. So I've pre-threaded my needle with 3-strand embroidery floss. Whoops. So much for pre-threading. This has a big eye and is pretty blunt. Those are good qualities in a needle like this. Okay, so what this is one of those envelopes from a transfer pattern book. It was not the greatest condition, so to stabilize it and strengthen it. Oh, it looks like there might have been a tear here. I could actually emphasize this a bit. And quite often I just use whatever ink is left on my brush. I don't even touch it to the... And I could also be doing this at the end. Didn't have to drop everything and grab the brush right now. Anyway, so yes, I wanted to strengthen this. I didn't want to trim this top off and you know, make a nice clean edge, because where's the fun in that? I'll do the rest after I... So I backed it with some tea or coffee dyed grid paper. Or maybe that... Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's tea dyed paper. Oh, yeah, I had paper like that. And then a couple of these note cards and a book page that is really nice to the touch. It was a commemorative book of some sort that a big oil company had printed at some important anniversary. And anyway, I'll show you once I've got it all sewn together. So what I did, again, beforehand, was line those pieces up using my awl. Oh, and I cleaned out this little pouch of my book binding pouch, because it was a bit of a mess. Now on this one, no, I've decided on the orange. Okay, so I used my awl. I clipped the pages together, and then I clipped the pages to the cover. And in that way, you know, everything lines up. So I'm going to use or do the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, which again is readily available anywhere on YouTube. So because I want, oh, maybe I never do it this way. Maybe I should do it this way for a change. This will give me the little tie on the outside. So I guess the disadvantage of embroidery floss is that if you get all your layers, let me line them up so that I don't have one misbehaving, one strand misbehaving. Okay, so you leave a tail. Now this was just a piece of thread that I found in a box where I keep all my embroidery thread, and it So it was pre-cut. It probably came out of an embroidery cross-stitch kit that I had taken apart at some point. I'll lift this up so you can see. My goal here is to, number one, get through the hole, not pierce the existing thread that's there. I can, if I'm on the wrong side of this thread, I can fix that after the fact. Okay. Oh, so I was afraid that I didn't have enough thread, and look, I've got lots. So maybe I will just pull this, even these ends out a bit. I still have plenty. I'll be able to cut some off. Looks nice and neat inside. Now, the trick also is to make sure that each of these two tails are on either side of that center thread. Like so, before you tie it off. So the typical thing that most people do is 3 knots. And each, like you've, oh, I thought I evened that out a little more than that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Cross over left with one, cross over right with the next one, and then, you know, do a 3rd knot just for some peace of mind. Although I don't know if in the history of journal making or book binding, if this has ever undone. I highly doubt it. My cute little scissors. Just for now, I'll just leave this relatively long. I'll neaten up this edge and carefully remove the clips. Carefully remove the clips. Carefully remove the clips. I think I had to spread, you know, open this up a bit because, of course, these things are more decorative than practical. And that this short end likes to dig into things, thread or paper, and make a hole. Okay, I don't know if I'm going to do any more decoration. I said I would do some more inking, but you're not going to see that. So this is just fairly, well, I don't know, it almost feels like parchment paper with the subtle rose. This is the book I was talking about that had nice linen-y like paper, and this was a repeating element. So I just did a collage on there. Switched this up so it's, you know, so all the roses aren't in the back corner. I see that this is lifting. Or maybe was never glued down well in the first place. Now this center thing, because it's 2 levels, 2 layers of paper, is quite a bit thicker. Did I not get any glue out? What the heck? When it squeezes out, you know you've got enough. And then, of course, more of the same. So I will put this somewhere to flatten out a little further. I will decide, because this is on the outside, I could attach a bead or something, and goodness knows I've got beads that I'm not using, so I should do that. So again, I'll just, we'll call this 3/4 done. And then I wanted to show you another little book that I put together. Because every time I have some paper on my desk, what I end up doing is keeping it, folding it in half, creating little signatures of all kinds of sizes. I got teeny tiny ones, like little inch-sized ones. And they get pretty messy pretty quickly. This must have been some scrapbook paper. that I backed using just a solid black. And I'll show you the papers once I get this sewn together. Now, again, same scenario, clip the papers together, clip them into the book, and I used 4 clips this time to avoid, because I have kind of a little bit of a spine here. It's not the same as this booklet. I did want it to be centered, and I wanted my signature strings to be, you know, vertical and parallel. So as I was cleaning out my little binding thing, little pouch, I discovered that, well, I got rid of all the elastic out of there because that shouldn't be there. So this is, it says knot tying, and I'm thinking that this was probably intended for jewelry. This definitely was waxed cotton jewelry cord. So because the spine is black, I want to use black. There aren't that many pages. I think there are 7 pages in there. So I'm going to opt for the thinner one. But I just wanted to show you that there are all sorts of things that you can be using for binding journals. You saw embroidery thread. This is, I don't know what this is. I think this might be the one that breaks. I should test it. I have upholstery thread that I got at Fabricland. This is waxed linen, and I have that in a couple of colors. This is a little tiny crochet thread ball, size 5. The smaller the number, the thinner the cord. And then I have random things like this. Let's just see if I can break it. Okay, that's a good strong one. There's a bit of a shine to this one, so I don't know where that came from. And this one doesn't break either. Because, you know, like, I'm Superwoman, so if I can't break it, you know it's good to go. Okay, so I'm going to use the narrower cord. If you hear some creaking occasionally, oh, I should have measured my 3 thicknesses. If you hear that occasionally, I'm trying to determine if my chair is starting to squeak or if those are my hips that are squeaking. So maybe I'll let you know what the verdict is on that. I did find in the last few days that oh brother, I hope I can thread it in this needle. I found that in the last few days I must have been doing more sitting than normal, because when I get up, it's not pretty. Let's just say it's not pretty. Our house is fairly long, so if I'm avoiding the treadmill, I could at least climb stairs. We have very ergonomic stairs. Do a few flights of stairs. Or I could just walk back and forth across the house several times just to keep those limbs moving. But it's so much more fun to craft. Okay, that is a tight squeeze. So that means that I should have, and maybe I still will, enlarge the hole a little more by inserting the awl a little further. And again, if I was using that linen or upholstery thread, for instance, and that hole would have been very adequate. It doesn't help that part of this has 2 strands of thread and the big needle going through. And I think you can see that as I punched that from the inside, it exposed some white marks. What I'll do is touch that up with my black brush from my black inking brush. Okay, so again, remember we need to have one thread on each side. Boy, you know, I broke a cardinal rule here. I did not check to make sure all the pages were right. Well, I guess I did at some point. The pages are all right side up, which is a good thing. Although I'm not opposed to having things upside down when it makes sense to do so. And I think because this is so thick, probably 2 knots are good enough here. I'll probably cut this really quite short because it's so thick already that I can't see adding any sort of charm or anything. I still haven't found my favorite, whatchamacallit, this thing, bone folder. So I brought another one that I have just so that I've got something. Now you can see that there's plenty of space for this to grow. I've left the threads intact. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. And this is what I have done. I used this sort of modern, if you can call 1977 modern, ledger. Now, I showed that book. It's huge. I don't remember the size, but probably 15 high by maybe 20 or so wide. So the pages are gigantic. Yesterday when I had that coffee or tea, I spritzed a page and of course the ink all ran, which again is an effect. So I'm just leaving this as it is. This book is interesting in that there's blue handwriting, red circles and so on. These holes here, I find it when I want to show you. Thought I put it away for safekeeping so that I could show you. Anyway, you've all seen adding machine tape, and that is what was stapled on the corner of virtually every page. So I will use that in some way. Boy, I wish I could show you. If the tape from this particular page is long enough that I could actually, here, let me get rid of these fussy cuts, that will help. Oh, that's maddening. Anyway, the, what was I saying? The adding machine tape, with some backing, I'm sure could even be a pocket lengthwise, you know, in a horizontal configuration, landscape configuration. So I didn't really want to cut off any of this paper because it's got the nice numbers. The person has also carried some numbers, I guess balances forward in pencil. So I just used some blue and green paper that I have in my stash. If someday I ever do a studio tour, I'll show you my paper holder. I was a successful bidder on a lot of paper, a lot, L-A, you know what I mean, an online auction lot of paper. It was from the Alberta government surplus. I bid on it, I was successful, and there were a couple of bankers' boxes, you know, the ones with the handles and the cover, full of papers. So I have paper from now until eternity. Some of it, like this blue stuff, I don't know what this is. It's almost see-through, translucent. It does not take coffee or tea dye worth a darn. The paper basically almost disintegrates, so I don't know what's up with that. But I promised that this would be a shorter video, so let's just see what I managed to do in this however many minutes. So a couple of bound little journals, a note card type thing, 2 out of 4 glassine envelopes, no, not envelopes, bags, and, oh, I never glued this side down. And that's too flimsy to ever be a tuck. So this, I'll glue this down basically on the bigger areas of the design. And I'm sure that I will be collaging over this in some manner at some point. So it's not the end of the world if I don't get every single little area. And she's down. Okay, so a page flip, 2 bound mini journals, a couple of glassine envelopes, and that is not too bad. And it's gotten several things off my table. So I will leave it here. Again, I'll be posting this under Arm's Length Art, and both on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm very pleased to say that my subscriber list is slowly getting longer. And if you have chosen to subscribe, thank you. It means the world to me. It provides some encouragement that I'm not just sitting here day after day talking to myself. And it also, you know, gets what I have to say and what I'm doing out there to more people. So I will stop there. I hope that you have a safe and creative day, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.